Welcome to the Au. I'm your host, Beefloaf. This show is being powered by From the 108, FromThe108.com, where you can get all of our content, top to bottom, blogs, podcasts, and videos, including the world-famous Sunday Soak. You can also get all of our merch there as well, including the infamous Wave Sucks and hashtag 108 in Garbs. Currently, we're selling our Wave Sucks beanies at FromThe108.com. They are $23, perfect for winter, and Jeff Passan approved. This show is powered by you, the loyal 108 supporter. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to tickle the undercarriage in the process. Like, comment, turn on notifications, and most definitely super chat, because that's how we get paid, and that's how we make the content you know and love. Tonight's guest. She's the digital content producer for NBC Sports Chicago, and she also trusts our good friend Jeff Passan more than any other male figure in her life. Tori Rubinstein, welcome to the Au.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Now I'm getting bodied in the Tori, I'm already getting clobbered in the comments. Late loaf. Just take it easy, okay? I'm allowed to be a minute or two late, all right? I'm usually very punctual. They get the accountant in me. They think that I'm always going to be on time. But I appreciate you doing this. And, I wanted to ask, the picture that I put up there, it looks like you're at some sort of sporting event. Where are you exactly in this picture?
This was, okay, I think this was the Elite Eight when it was hosted at the United Center in 2022 when it was Kansas versus Miami. And the winner went to the Final Four. And that was obviously, clearly I'm a Kansas fan. So that is where that picture was taken.
Yes. Beautiful. I was wondering because at first blush, I'm like, is that a hockey game? And then I'm like, no, it's not no hockey game. And I'm like, and you got the Kansas hat on too. I'm like, must be some other shit. This is not a Chicago sports.
It was not a Chicago sporting event. It was, and I was very, very drunk. I will say that.
That's okay. We're in favor of that on this show. In fact, I'm going to be drinking white wine while we do it. I hope that's okay with you.
Of course it is.
All right. Of course. First things first. You already mentioned you went to Kansas. You graduated Kansas 2019, degree in journalism. You're coming out of college. What does the marketplace look like for a grad in journalism? And was everything digital media at that point, or was the career path varied as you're coming out of school?
It was a little bit varied. So I was lucky enough when I was graduating college that I had a fellowship set up at this company called Octagon, which I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a sports marketing agency and also a sports agency. It's kind of both. And I had that lined up, so I didn't really have to worry about applying for jobs and stuff right after college. So that was pretty sweet. But it was definitely more of like sports marketing, more client-facing, account management type of thing. And I kind of knew going into it that it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. It wasn't really necessarily, content creation where I was telling stories directly to, like people on social media or, people watching TV and things like that, or writing stories for people to read. It was very much a lot of client-based, brand-facing things.
Yeah, so, and that's such a different thing too. Like handling,
very different. I didn't love it. It wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but I was just very stoked to have, that experience going right out of college. And then I was like, after these 6 months, if I like it, great. And if I don't, I can kind of try and move on to where I feel like I belonged, which was on the news and information and entertainment side of things.
Absolutely. Makes sense. Now, what do you do in media and particularly content creation? What are the ways? Because a lot of people want to be doing this, right? It's not just your degree. Like, what other ways are you using to get into this industry? Are you, is it like you're doing a bunch of internships? Are you creating your own content kind of while you're in college or approaching college or whatever? Like, kind of what are the steps? Because to me, it's not that clear. I went to college a long time before you did, but I went to college for accounting, and when I left college, I got a job in accounting, and 23 years later, I'm still an accountant. Like, I don't understand the varied paths. Like, it was like this. You went for this vocation, basically. I was almost like a white collar tradesman. I went for this vocation. That's what I do. And so I'm interested. How does the path look?
It's very different for everybody. I would say for the most part, yeah, it's just about getting involved in whatever you can in college, and then doing internships at different media outlets or newspapers, wherever you may have it. But I will say, for me, I'm going to be completely honest, I really did not have as much experience as probably a lot of people that were trying to break into the industry back then, but especially people that are trying to break into the industry now. I never had an internship. I did write for the student newspaper at the University of Kansas, and I was a part of like the student news station and things like that. But I never worked for a real like, professional publication before working at NBC Sports Chicago. And so kind of back to how I knew that I kind of wanted to change gears after that fellowship at the sports marketing agency. I knew that what I had to do was just get a job, literally any sort of job at like NBC Sports Chicago. I was applying to like The Athletic, Bleacher Report, like any type of the Tribune. The environment I knew I wanted to work in, like I would have taken a job in the mailroom. Like I just knew I needed to get my foot in the door. So what I ended up doing was I took my very first job outside of that in the industry was I was hired as a part-time copy editor at NBC Sports Chicago in March of 2020, where I was basically just the grammar police for the website.
So it's literally someone writes something, there's something you're getting ready to post, and it's your job to proofread. Basically, you're proofing absolutely everything in there. Okay, 100%. Interesting. And when you're going through that process, where we're throwing out of resumes, is it a lot of blind resumes, or do you have like some connections that you're really trying to leverage to like get into places? Because I had Chris Tannehill on here a few months ago, and he was telling me about all this great work he was doing or whatever, and then he couldn't get a foothold, and eventually the way he got in with the score is his dad played softball at Mike North, and Mike North got him a job. Like so I'm always wondering what the connections. How was it for you, Tori?
It really does help to have connections. I've gotten other people opportunities through connections, but honestly, I think I really did just get lucky. I saw an opening, applied, did the whole thing. I'm sure I wouldn't have been surprised if the person who had hired me and had been, reading my resume had like seen some of my tweets before and things like that, or read some of the stuff that I had, because I had like written in the, like I said, the student newspaper and things like that at Kansas. So I wouldn't be surprised if like they'd heard of me before, but I really didn't leverage many connections. I will say that it's funny because a lot of times I'll get a lot of LinkedIn messages from people in college, and they'll be like, hey, like, wondering like what kind, like just looking for career advice, or like how you kind of similar to the questions you're asking me, and I'll be like looking at they're like 18 years old. I'll be like looking at their experience. I'm like, you're like kind of more qualified for my job than I am. So I'm like, I don't know.
You're doing great. Yeah, I think that's how I always feel. Like the next generation, they gotta do more to get the spots. But when the things are newer, I guess it might be a little bit easier. Let's get to a drink real quick. And Drew Bogue says, "Cheers to Tori, and great at her job, and dedicated." So cheers. All right, let's move on to NBC Sports Chicago, as you mentioned. You're the digital content producer, and from my understanding, just from looking around, searching things, this requires a varied skill set, a wide range of skills, from cutting video, putting up photos on Instagram and Twitter, crafting tweets, and writing copy, as well as articles for the website, which you have like a billion bylines. And I see them for Sox stuff just naturally, but I didn't realize it was like kind of every sport you're writing constantly for all these things. Would you say someone breaking into the media today needs to develop all these skills, or which of these skills you think are kind of like the most important right now, or which ones that you use the most, I guess?
So I will say this. I would say that every single person on my team, which is it knows how to do everything. If they need somebody to do social, every person has at least the bare minimum baseline knowledge of how to do that. If somebody needs to write, they have at least the bare minimum baseline knowledge of how to do that. And it's really helpful because everybody has seen how harsh this industry is when it comes to like the ESPN layoffs, the Athletic layoffs, everything. It's like anybody at any moment can just be taken away like that. And the more things you know how to do, the harder you are to fire. And so that is, I guess, kind of my advice is you don't necessarily, it kind of depends on like what the job and what the company you're applying for is. But I think probably the thing people are looking for most is website clicks. And so to that, I would probably say writing is probably the most valuable skill set that I have at the company, even though I am very, very much, I take a lot of ownership over the social media aspect. It really is kind of, that's not really what keeps the company afloat. That's kind of more of just a brand facing thing. It's really all about the website clicks.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Now you mentioned bare minimum for doing social. What is the bare minimum for doing social? Someone who's doing it professionally for a noted corporate brand like yourself.
I would say the bare minimum would be knowing how to use the programs to clip highlights in real time, which is how we, obviously during White Sox games, someone hits a home run, we get it up on our social media platforms very, very quickly. So knowing how to use those programs and just knowing how to make a basic Instagram cap or a basic Twitter caption. Not everybody's going to be super creative and funny, like, but as long as you know how to be like, and so-and-so, like, so-and-so hit a home run in deep left center, or, just knowing how to kind of be quick in the moment is pretty much the baseline of how to do social media.
Is speed important, especially given you mentioned a home run, so like in a baseball game, yeah, the action is nothing, and then boom, something big happens. Is it important to get to that moment quickly, like within 30 seconds, 60 seconds? Like, what's the general timeline of like getting to something that's a big moment like that?
My goal is always to be the first outlet to get it up on Twitter or X. I don't know what we're calling it these days, but my goal is always to beat the actual White Sox team account, which it's kind of like a fun little competition that I have. It's like a very one-sided competition. Like, they don't know that we're in this war, but like my goal is always to get the highlight up before them, because whoever gets the highlight up first, that's who people are going to retweet first. That's who major outlets like, Bleacher Report, Sports Center, that's who they're going to take your content from and quote tweet it and things like that. So, and that's also how you make more money. The more views, and you can monetize that type of content. So speed is extremely important. If it's like something happens and there's a breakdown and I can't get to a highlight after like 3 minutes, I won't even bother. I'll just like retweet someone else.
Oh, I got it, because it's dead at that point. That's how small the window is. Oh, that's very interesting. I didn't know that, and but it makes sense, because you're right. The first one to market is going to get all the retweets, and not just from the big. But from all the fans that are watching the game too, and they're like, oh yeah, this is, and they want to make their comments and quote tweet and push the thing out there. So yeah, that makes total sense there. You were mentioning, a lot of the writing. Is that your particular favorite part of the job, of all the things that you are tasked with doing on a day-to-day basis?
I think my favorite. There's really nothing better than live tweeting a really good game when and it's close and the fans are excited and there's a lot going on. I think there's a really special feeling there where you kind of just feel like you're really in it. And that's also kind of just where I feel like I thrive the most. I'm just very quick, and I feel like I have a really good sense of, I don't know, I'm just very like quick-witted and can think of a good caption, and I can think of, if at the end of a game, if we win a big game, I'm really good at thinking of like a good troll and things like that. I think that's really where I very much thrive. I do like writing. It is a part of the job that I enjoy, but I think it's definitely I think that I bring a lot to the table for social.
I love it. Well, it also has an immediacy to it, Tori. When you do it, you get immediate feedback on whether this was good or not. Whereas with the article, yes, you push it out there, but usually it's pushing it out from a variety of different sources, media sources, and getting it out there. And sometimes it takes a while for an article to like catch. A good one or whatever, it might lay there for a little bit before, but a tweet usually just catches fire kind of immediately. So I understand
it's a
that.
Fun community too, like to be in, when you're interacting with people on Twitter and things like that. It's fun to go back and forth and see what everybody's saying in real time about things, and having people kind of respond to your content in real time. And it's a fun gig for sure.
Yeah, that's where it's like a community out there. I mean, we call it the White Sox Twitter community, but it really is. There's a lot of people out there, and they're quote tweeting, retweeting, yelling at each other, whatever, interacting in a variety of ways, for sure. Since it's kind of a living, breathing thing, as we were discussing Twitter a little bit, like, are you allowed to just ready, fire, aim with tweets? Is that kind of the general thesis there, or are there some tweets that are crafted before the game? Are there things you're like, you're going to set up some stuff because you have this pitching matchup, or we know X player has come back into town and now we're going to be ready for every time they come up to the plate, we're going to do something for them? What's the mixture of all that stuff?
Well, it's definitely a mixture. I would say, not like when you're live tweeting a game, 95% of that is spur of the moment. You have no idea what's going to happen and things like that. But obviously, like, for example, when we knew Jose Abreu was not coming back to the team last offseason, we were very prepared with graphics, all that kind of stuff. We had captions, all that kind of stuff already prepared, obviously. Things like that, like when it was like NASCAR night at the stadium, we had stuff prepared for that. And, we knew Tim Anderson was approaching at what was it, like 1,000 hits or something. I don't know. That was accurate. Something like that last season. We had things prepared for that. So It's definitely kind of a mixture of both. And I will say that I don't, obviously there's like 162 games. I don't do every single White Sox game. There's two to three of us that kind of rotate over the games. If a game falls when I'm on, I'm the default person that will be doing social media for that game. But it's like, if it's like a Saturday or like I'm working a night shift for a Bulls game or something and the games are in the day, somebody else will be doing that.
Okay, got it. And with regards to like approval process, it sounds like a lot of it is in the moment. So are there guidelines of things you absolutely cannot do when you're tweeting out there? Obviously, I'm guessing you can't be like me tweeting, fuck this guy, or something crazy like that, or like Luis Roberts just skull fucked your team. Like you can't tweet something like that like I would. Okay, but like what are the general guidelines?
So this is very shocking to a lot of people. There aren't many. There's not much of an approval process. It is very that I am trusted to not fuck things up, and I try not to as best I can. And I've gotten in trouble quite a few times for tweets that I've sent that have been not appropriate, or something that was maybe a little bit over the line, but
you took a shot. It happens.
No approval process. It's really just kind of using your best judgment. I will say that in terms of like swearing and stuff, we try to keep it family-ish friendly, but like I tend to try to cross the line a little. Like I'll say like the F word, but then like star it out, or I'll like I'll drop soft curse words like one hell of a game and stuff like that, which those tend to be okay, but there's really not much of an approval process. But if it is something where it's like that we do have prepared like that, then I will probably get a second. If I have time to get a second set of eyes on something, I will. But most of the time, I don't. If there's something where I really feel like might be crossing a line and I can't decide, then I'll send it to a coworker. It's not like I have to get it approved like through my boss or anything like that, or like
it's
anybody higher up.
Is this insane or no? Okay, let's go.
Literally, that is the approval process. If there is one at all, that's it.
Well, in a way, I mean, a Twitter account really needs to have kind of a voice or an image in a way. And Southsiders talk like that. I mean, not to, I'm a lifelong Southsider. I mean, I'm a Bridgeporter. I'm not suburban Southside, so it's a difference. But I mean, White Sox fans talk that way. And so they're responsive to some of these things. So I appreciate the just being totally candid with it, because I think that's kind of the way we all fan in general. And I think just everyone fans that way, and then the group that we're talking about is even more receptive to that. So.
That's kind of like one of the big things that I really try to make a conscious effort to do when I'm running those accounts. Is it's not fun to just be the corporate account that is the cheerleader of the team, which obviously that is our number one goal, is to get people to tune into things and watch our games and things like that. But I take a lot of pride in like kind of being one with the fans. Like that's the type of content that people want to see, and they want to feel heard and like that they're being understood. And I think that that's definitely when we were conceptualizing. This was even like before I got here. I think White Sox stock existed probably a few years before I even got on board at the company. But I think that was what the initial goal of these types of accounts, the White Sox, Bulls, Blackhawks, Bears talks, were in the first place.
Yeah, it makes sense. And despite what you might see on Twitter, some of us fans do like to see positive stuff and do like to enjoy the positive moment from the White Sox, even if they're not having a great year. I mean, I can speak for myself that I would much rather go to a game, even if the Sox are 20 games below 500, where they kill some division rival than wallow in them losing. So I'm appreciative of that approach. Let's get to a drink real quick. Senor Sox, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Senior Sox making fun of Smokey Robinson. I don't know if I'm sure you've probably seen that on the internet. That's a goofy thing. Speaking of tweets, I mean, I had to get here. I wouldn't. I'd be upset with myself if I didn't get here. You authored probably the most famous tweet that's ever come from this account, and I'll put it up the screen right now so the podcast listeners. It is the account of Will Smith standing in the empty room at the end of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and it's us wondering if the rest of the division is going to show up this year. And this is from the beginning of the 2022 season. How did you come up with something like that? And does it still make you smile that this thing is so goddamn famous?
So this goes back to us not having much of an approval process. This is literally I was laying in bed. I think it must have been like later. I think it was at night. It was before the season started. And I just was trying to think of something clever to say, get the fans excited for the upcoming season. And that was the first thing that popped into my head. And I just let it rip. That was how that happened. And honestly, I was not expecting even before the season went, way off the rails. Yeah. I was not expecting the negative response. So that was definitely an error on my end of just judgment of what the temperature of the fan base at the time. But sometimes
the attention, Tori, the attention this still gets when someone cuts the picture and puts everyone knows that tweet. It's like the most famous White Sox Twitter tweet. So in a way, like you're like, oh, we got a lot of negative response, but also it's like it's known. It is absolutely like if we were making. If we were putting a time capsule together, that fucking thing would be in there for sure. Like of all of White Sox fandom,
For a while it did. I think that it was such a negative experience. Not that, but just like the entire season, where it's like, especially for the people, not just me, the people that everybody that's literal job it is to watch what had unfolded over the last couple of seasons, and it's like you can't really turn it off when it's your job and things like that, and you're forced to kind of confront it every single day. And I think that there was definitely like a point where I was like, oh my God, this is like actually pissing me off. Like I literally like there was one point when I had to start blocking people because it was just like people were just it was really starting to affect my mental health. Just the whole situation of the season. And then but I understood it. Like I'm born and raised a White Sox fan. Like believe me, every single thing that every single fan has ever commented on any of our tweets or any of the White Sox tweets, like I'm right there with you. Like I get it. I think it was just, but looking back on it, you know what? At the end of the day, it's about engagement and it's about creating a piece of content that will live forever. And I think I'm going to call that a win.
I think it's an enormous one. I don't think there is a tweet that is absolutely more well known. But you bring up a great point there, just about the job and about the separation there. How do you kind of separate, Tori? I'll say highs and lows, although the most recent season's been more lows. So like I assume you get more negative feedback on tweets. How do you do that, like in your personal life, and like just cut it free? How do you like cut it loose from you? Because it can be affecting. I run my Twitter account and I help run the From the 108 Twitter account. And when people are really bagging on us, it does have some effect. And I consider myself kind of pretty numb to most things, but it always affects at least some. So how do you like cut it loose?
It's tough. It really is tough. But I think it's trying not to. Listen, I'm a huge White Sox fan, as I've said my whole life. Read all the articles, consume all the content. I really don't haven't been consuming much content outside of the 8 hours a day that I work. And for example, if a friend is like, hey, like we're going to a White Sox game, or not even just this applies to like all of the Chicago sports teams, quite frankly. They'll be like, hey, do you want to go to, like last season, they'd be like, hey, we have Blackhawks tickets, do you want to go? I'd be like, no, like that's just not what I want to do on my time off. Like I really try to do other things, lead into my other interests and kind of just let the 9 to 5 be the time that I have to think about Chicago sports, and I don't need to really subject myself to anything that I don't want to when I'm not getting, and the times I'm not getting paid.
Yeah. Why ingest more White Sox than you absolutely need to? And that actually could go for all the teams these past years. And leading in there, how much harder is it to create content, particularly in a season like the 2023 White Sox? So we covered 2022 where, that tweet, and that team actually had hope down the stretch. And if a couple things would have broke right, they probably would have been a wild card team. They just didn't. 2023 was just everything fell apart. The wheels fell off the damn thing. How much harder is it to compose content in that year than it is like 2021 where they're racing to a division title?
Oh, it's a lot harder. I would make the joke all the time last season that I had the hardest job in America. But
you then Pedro Grifol. That's
but there's not much you can do at a certain point, because it's also like we have a relationship with the team, and I can't. Especially the way that this fan base operates, which I love this fan base. That's what it is to be a Southsider,
Yeah.
But the way that they would that White Sox Twitter would be interacting with posts, no matter what it was would just be so, it was impossible to do anything positive because it would just be bombarded with negativity.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was almost worse than just not posting anything at all. So it got to a point where we didn't really post very many things. And if someone did something cool, like we'd post obviously highlights and exciting things that happened during the game, or if somebody hit a milestone or something like that, a player. But we would obviously celebrate that on social media and things like that. But there wasn't much else we could really do that was positive. But there also really wasn't much we could do that was negative because, again, that's not our job. Our job is to like try and get people to watch.
Get people to the broadcast. Yeah, get people to the game on television. Absolutely. No,
exactly. So it really was like between a rock and a hard place, and for all the teams, honestly. Like it was that way for the Blackhawks last year. But in the year like 2021 for the White Sox, or even I would say like 2020, was it 2022 for the year the Bulls were really good for the first half of the season before Lonzo Ball got hurt. Like that's like when it's the most fun and the easiest because there's just so much you can do. There's so many you control other accounts. You can talk shit. You can do all these things. You can make funny graphics. You can do funny memes. But it's just so much harder when the team is not just bad, but but beyond bad.
Terrible. Yeah. Well, yeah, and there's also like bit players that pop up and like can be fan favorites and out of nowhere. And last year's White Sox team didn't have any of that. It was like Luis Robert kind of by himself and having like an amazing year, but kind of having an amazing year all by his lonesome. This is a White Sox related podcast, and you mentioned that you've been a White Sox fan for your entire life. But I am going to put you on the spot. Do you have a favorite sport to do content for? Either Twitter or I see that you have like a billion bylines, as I mentioned earlier, or writing articles for. Is there a particular sport that you favor over the others in the context of a job that requires you to do multi-sports?
It's whichever team is doing the best is obviously the most fun and the easiest to cover. But I will say if it's just about the sport, I think like the White Sox have always had my heart. They're just my favorite team. They're the team that I care the most about. They're probably the team I know the most about. It's probably the sport I know the most about. So I would say that. But like I mentioned this a few minutes ago, when the Bulls are good, it's hard to beat that, especially on like NBA Twitter and when you're interacting with those types of fans and everything like that. So I would say baseball, but I really do love that. And I've been having a lot of fun with Connor Bedard. That's been a really refreshing, storyline for to cover across the season. So every time I get a chance to write about that guy, it's really fun.
It's funny that I know almost nothing about hockey. I've tried to get into hockey like 17 times, and I did watch all the dynasty when they went to the playoffs. But I had a friend; he would always try to get me into it. And my favorite player from him trying to get me into hockey is Marty Havlat. So that's how long ago I was like trying to get it. I could never get into it. So all I've been doing, Tori, is I've been putting up these posts that saying I'm trying to stay in the X algorithm, and I'll put Connor Bedard usually first, and then I'll name a bunch of sports stuff that I don't do, just so I stay in the mix because he's a phenomenon.
Who just like take all the trending topics and then
just throw them in a tweet. Yeah, exactly. Because I don't, and some of the stuff I might be into or not into, but like I usually use Connor Bedard because he's a phenomenon. He's a powerhouse, an 18-year-old powerhouse, if it will.
Yeah, 100%. I will say though that sometimes I do feel guilty when I write about the Bears, which I do a lot because it's huge. It's that's what people.
It's the biggest one.
Exactly, and like I know more than obviously most people, like the average person, about football, but. To be honest, some of these things I write, I probably shouldn't. I'm not qualified. Like there'll be times when I'm writing something and I'll be Googling on the site. I'll be like, what is a safety? Like, and then I'll just write the article and be like, that.
Good. It should be good enough.
Yeah, right. I'm like, if people knew who was writing.
Tori, don't feel bad because most of the people that watch the Bears know nothing about football either. I mean, present company included. I've been a Bears fan since I was a little kid, and I'm old enough to remember the '85 Bears. I was really small, but I'm old enough to remember them. And like, I'll watch the game, and it's like. I don't understand a lot of this. Like baseball, I understand, I think, reasonably well. But I don't understand football in that way either. It's entertaining though, regardless. Why, big, fast people colliding with each other is always going to be.
Yeah, but it pisses me off because every time something really cool happens, it gets like they call back, and I'm like, what is the point of this? And they don't even in the way that even broadcasters will react. They're like, that was amazing, but it's like we know there's a flag. Like this is it. Why are we even doing this right now? Like I just don't get it.
We got to do it over.
Yeah.
Let's get to this drink from Nathan Sheba. Thank you, Nathan. And Nathan says, "Don't tease me." She likes the Sox versus all the other Chicago teams. No backsies, Tori. So he's you claimed it now. You cannot take this back. If you go on someone else's podcast and say you like the Bulls better, we're gonna come and find you. Okay, just so you know.
That's fair.
Speaking of White Sox, we need to get into a little bit of White Sox talk. I can't let you leave without this since it's your favorite. And also, since you wrote an article on November 21st about Cease, Dylan Cease potentially getting traded. And that's been like a lot of the hot topic of the offseason for the White Sox. My personal opinion is I like what Chris Getz is doing, but it's a lot of small moves right now. Kind of the real meat on the bone is Dylan Cease and whether he's going to stay or go. My question for you is, when do you think he goes? Is he going to go before we ring in the new year? Or is he going to still be here in 2024, at least for a little bit?
I think he's got to be gone before spring training. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. If you asked me a week ago, I would say he'd been gone before Christmas. But
yeah,
I could see him then. Probably early January would be my guess at this point.
That makes sense. Any favorites? Yeah. Any favorites on where you think he ends up?
I could really see him going to Atlanta. I could see him really wanting to go there just because that's where he's from, everything like that. Right. And I feel like they do have a good amount of pitching to offer the White Sox in return. I could also see him going to the Orioles. I know that's a big one that a lot of people can see him going to. And also the Dodgers. I mean, I would maybe put the Dodgers above both of those teams right now, especially given the $68 million that is not going to Shohei Ohtani every single year for the next 10 years.
No kidding. That was just shocking news today to hear that he's deferring basically 97% of his money each year to allow them to have free cash flow to go. And I guess if you're Ohtani and you're making so much on endorsements, you could do that, but it just seems like such an insane move. It's hard to believe.
Well, I was thinking if I'm his wife, I'm being like, so do I have to return the 70 Birkin bags I just bought last week? Like, are we broke?
Exactly.
Like,
what's going on here? I kind of wonder, like, if they're going to spin that into ownership, like his career ends, like, oh, we're just going to convert some of the money we owe you into some ownership share or something like that, because it feels like more and more of these big athletes want to have equity stakes, and you can't do it while you're currently playing. But I'm just spitballing. I have no idea.
No, I mean,
I agree with you.
That's a good theory, but I would say the Dodgers is probably at this point, and then I would say I could see Atlanta.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you about the Dodgers, considering landing Ohtani, deferring the money, and really feeling like you're bulking up. Like if you're making that move, there's no move you won't make to try to make your team as good as possible.
Right, and Dylan Cease is one of the best pitchers on the market, so.
Right, and absolutely, and extremely durable, and they've had so many problems with injuries on their pitching staff. So, like, it's such a great fit. So, that's it's interesting. Last question about the White Sox. There's been some buzz about Luis Robert lately, which kills me. What do you think the chances are he actually gets dealt this offseason?
Not high. I really don't see that happening. Just. Chris Getz has said it too. There would have to be something absolutely completely wild in return, and I don't really know. I can't even imagine what that would be.
Me either.
Like,
it's one of these things. Like you trade Luis Robert, what are you hoping to get back? Well, you're hoping to get someone like Luis Robert back. Like I don't know how you do it.
He's 26 years old. He's not like he's 30, like 32 years old. Like
right.
By the time, even if the White Sox did a full rebuild, he'd still be in his prime by the time the White Sox were back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And, there is also a level of the fan in me is like, I want someone to root for out there. I want some superstar on this roster that every day when I show up to the ballpark, I want to see him,
I don't think that. I also feel like that is a reason that they would not trade him as well. They need something, especially if they're trading Cease, which they are.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Well, Tori, thank you so much for bestowing your knowledge on building a career in digital media, creating content for Chicago sports teams and the White Sox short-term futures. Remember, we ain't trying to be read on the show. We're just trying to understand. Do you have anything you want to plug before you go?
Honestly, no. Just follow me on Twitter. I would say Instagram, but honestly, you don't have to. I talk a lot about Taylor Swift on there. I'm not going to lie. So you might want to stay with me.
Okay, so any Swifties that are listening, go
You're
follow.
Follow me on Instagram. It's basically a fan account. It's where I separate. So Twitter is like I'm like Hannah Montana. Like Twitter is like my sports, and then Instagram is like my Swiftie.
Okay. Wonderful. Thanks so much, Tori. I appreciate you coming on.
Of course. Thank you.
Take care. There was Tori Rubinstein. That was awesome. I was really looking forward to that. I'm so glad she was able to make some time to come on. Next week's guest is nobody, because this is the final episode of the 2023 season of the Au Jus. We did 38 episodes in season 1. I told the boys I was going to shoot for 40. I fell a little short as I'm going to Vegas next week, and then we got Christmas after that. But I'm happy what we accomplished in year 1. We talked a lot of in-depth White Sox. We interviewed quite a bit of content creators, got all their tips and stories, and that was kind of the goal for the show. So we'll definitely be back in a few weeks, kind of after the new year, to start season 2. One edict from Treasy and MSS is they told me to shoot higher, continue to shoot for these great guests that we're getting. So we've had tremendous guests throughout the year. And it said, keep going with all that, so I'll continue to keep going with that. So thanks to all you in the 108 family that was up in the YouTube comments. Appreciate you smashing the like button, comments, and, of course, those super tips. I love all of you, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.